Unit 4, Government and the Macroeconomy. We are now on to Macroeconomics. So, 4.1, the role of the government. The role of the government locally, nationally, and internationally is 4.1.1. 4.2 is the macroeconomic aims of the government, and 4.2.1 is the macroeconomics aims of government. These are economic growth, full employment, stable prices, balance of payment stability, and redistribution of income. And we should consider reasons why a government might choose low unemployment, i.e. full employment, rather than have a low inflation. And there are certain of criteria that governments set for each aim. For example, what is considered low inflation? Well, the European Central Bank says 2% is a nice level of inflation. And normally your developed countries are looking for a low unemployment rate of under 5%. 4.2.2, possible conflicts between macroeconomic aims. Well, full employment versus stable prices. As we start to push people into employment, we tend to get inflation. Or economic growth versus balance of payment stability. Sometimes we have to borrow money to ensure growth. The USA has worked on a deficit but grown its economy in the past. However, if I want balance of payment stability, sometimes I have to cut back on government spending or cut back on imports to ensure that stability. And full employment versus balance of payment stability. I may fall into a surplus situation when I'm doing a lot of a export, yes, but that lot of export ensures full employment. On the other hand, I might want to stop of imports for an opposite reason for balance of payment stability, but by doing this, I may create employment in my land. But if I'm importing inputs, I might create some level of unemployment. So these are our aims of Unit 4.1 and 4.2. So the role of the government in an economy. The government can be producer. The government may be the producer of key industries. They could have natural monopolies. They could be producing some essential products. They could be producing some merit goods. They are producing many of our public goods. The government could be an employer. A lot of people are employed in state-owned enterprises and employed as teachers at government schools, employed by the municipality, employed as policemen and policewomen, employed in the army. And I should stop now because there's a large number of people employed by the government. Key industries. The most important industries are owned and run by the government in a lot of lands. Electricity, railway, transport could be considered natural monopoly. Private sector cannot always produce at low prices that match a state monopoly. housing, education, and healthcare. These are essential products. The government provides them free, sometimes or subsidized prices. In the UK, they have council houses that you could get as a lower rental than that of the market. In many countries, you can get free education provided by the government, and the NHS in the UK provides free healthcare in most cases.
Sorry.
Well, we've met the idea of merit goods before. It is a little bit of market failure if you think back to microeconomics. Now, the thing of the merit good is that it's a good that gives more benefit than we think is a merit good. Yeah. So generally the demand is less. Things like education, healthcare. The private sector production would be less. There are less of private hospitals. There are less of private schools. So they are said to be underproduced. Hence, the government should produce merit goods such as public schools and such as is argued in the UK, the National Health Service, public hospitals. A nice reminder of the public goods. This is a good that's non-rivalrous, non-excludable. We use the example of the streetlight. Public parks. Even a lighthouse. Now, the private sector does not have the profit incentive to produce much of lighthouses or much of street lights. So in many places, there is no production of streetlights. Or they are underproduced, and hence the government should be producing public goods. So we did mention that the government is an employer. A large number of people work in the government sector. It helps to reduce unemployment, and sometimes they're an ideal employer. They provide me training, pension, and other benefits. As mentioned previously, we can get government jobs in the railways, in the police, and other state-run companies, etc., etc., etc. Yes, why not think of some government opportunities for employment? You could be a diplomat. You could be... Oh, but I won't spoil it. You mentioned some 5 things in your head. Okay, so here's looking at locally. I've taken something from Chef News, the Sheffield City News. Try saying Sheffield City News a number of times and see what happens. Anyway, in Sheffield, the popular Forge Dam is set for 300,000 restoration project. There's a nice little picture of the ducks that are living in the Forge Dam. And Sheffield City Council are planning to spend some 300,000 of beautiful Sheffield British pounds, and their local cabinet approved the funding, and they've got some volunteers called Friends of Porter Valley. Something nationally. Nationally in South Africa, on the 21st of January 2021, the government are planning some long-term rules for travel, weddings, and even rentals in South Africa. So this is the government working nationally. Here we have Internationally, what are the governments doing internationally? Well, according to this, if I read it, there's an agreement on fishing opportunities in the Atlantic North Sea, Mediterranean and Black Sea for 2021. This is the European Council, the Council of the EU. Following a two-day intense negotiation, ministers reached an agreement on the catch limits for over 200 commercial fish stocks in the Atlantic, the North Sea, the Mediterranean and the Black Sea for 2021, and in the case of deep sea species for 2021 and 2022. Blah, 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 blah. Co-managed by the UK during the last days, giving ongoing EU-UK negotiations, provisional quotas for fish stock shared with the UK, approach was agreed for stocks co-managed with Norway. Very international role here. So what are aims of government policies? Well, we've got 5 main aims that we will look at in the IGCSE 0455 economic syllabus, and these are namely number 1, economic growth, number 2, full employment, number 3, stable prices, number 4, balance of payment stability, and number 5, redistribution of income. If you look carefully, you will see that number 2 may also be interpreted as low unemployment, and number 3 could be targeted as low inflation.
It's fine. I'd rather just work through the night.
Very scarily, Woman in Black. The movie is playing. I'm going to go somewhere lighter.
Don't go chasing shadows out there.
Well, I find Woman in Black as a very scary horror movie. But let's go back to slides. We're looking at economic growth. Did you know that China is the only major economy to report economic growth for 2020? China's economy expanded by 2.3% in 2020. China's growth makes it an outlier among large economies. And some people are speculating that China may overtake USA. Okay, so looking locally and globally, and here is something local to Washington. Washington in the USA. Now, this is the concept of full employment or low unemployment. And policymakers in Washington are eager to return to the period of low unemployment that preceded the pandemic, and are less concerned than they used to be about inflation or taking on debt. So, rather have low unemployment and we'll worry about the debt later, and we'll worry about the inflation later. So, the idea of stable prices, low inflation, apparently 20th of January 2021, South Africa's consumer inflation is at a 16-year low. But some things have become more expensive in the last year. I see some potatoes, I see some apples. Interesting. So balance of payment stability. This is a kind of an accounting concept. Yes, accountants will balance their payments. You may have noticed I have a wonderful hat. So wonderful. It can do this. Yes, such a hat actually was an import. I sent off on, I think it was Amazon, but it might have been eBay. And this beautiful soft hat came from outside of Germany. I'm not sure where. I think it came from China, but I'm not sure. It looks like it should have come from Russia, but I think it came from China. Anyway, my nice German euros did leave Germany, or at least the equivalent of money left Germany. And what happened was I bought an import, yeah. At the same time that I was buying this beautiful hat, people from Germany would be selling beautiful cars and beautiful of machineries. Now, to cut the long story short, at the end of a year, people will look at how much money is flowing out of the country and how much money is flowing into the country, and then they will look at their balance of payments. Now, if I look here, the Jakarta Post, the Indonesian economy is maintaining stability towards recovery, and these guys have got a balance of payment surplus. They're actually selling more things, exporting things, and money is coming into the Indonesian economy. On the other side, if I look a little bit further down, it's the United States, and what they've had is they've had some deficits in the federal budget and a balance of payment deficit, as in they're borrowing to keep the economy of the USA on track. Now, they would like to regain some stability of balance of payment. So many things to do, so many things to try. Is balance of payment stability more important than controlling unemployment? Is it more important than controlling economic growth? It is very tricky, and it's up to the respective governments to decide. And you guys, while you are studying economics, will have your own opinions. But as we can see from the last few articles, there is a division of opinion around the world. And we've also found that you cannot achieve all 5 aims at the same time. So in the background, while all this is happening, the rich might be becoming richer and the poor may be becoming poorer. And here is a little extract that I found randomly on the internet. I am a Democrat, one who is very concerned about socialism in America. As I understand it, socialism is a government policy to redistribute wealth from one group to another. Should we be taking money from the rich to give to the poor, like Robin Hood and his merry men? I take from the rich and I give to the poor, and the poor become richer and the rich become disincentivized to work hard. Sometimes if you overtax the rich to give to the poor, then the rich leave your country and go and be rich somewhere else. It's not so easy to leave your country if you're poor. There are more poor people than rich people. Politically, it's not a bad idea. However, if we took all the money of the rich and gave it to the poor, would we have rich anymore? If the rich had no money, would they be able to give us jobs? The idea of full employment. Full employment, be careful of this one. Later on, full employment may be something called YF, which is full employment output. This is measuring that the economy is using all of its resources to their fullest potential. But let me talk of full employment as in let's get as many people into work. Well, full employment, we've got to define something called the labor force. You could be economically active, like me, or you could be economically inactive, well, like you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're a child, if you're a student, oh my goodness, I should stop borrowing slides. If you are a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or just a stay-at-home, yes, for example, if I've got sufficient of savings, sufficient of wealth, I may not need to work. Or I may value my leisure time. What if I win the lotto and overnight become rich? Would I be economically inactive? I wonder. If I did fall down and bang my head and my brains become scrambled, would I be able to teach? If I was working with my hands and a crocodile did bite both my hands off, I wouldn't be able to work if I was in manual work. On the other hand, we've got the idea of people willing and able to work, and these become the ones that we get into employment. Okay, well, here we've got many of definitions. There's the International Labour Organization, the ILO, who defines who is unemployed and who is looking for work. The British government will define the idea of unemployment differently to the government of Germany, but basically they're looking at people who are able to work, number one, and are willing to work, but do not have a job. And these guys are called the unemployed. Now, if I want an unemployment rate, I take the unemployed, I divide them. I find out what percentage they are of the labor force. Now, even in what is called full employment, we'll have about 3% of people unemployed. They could be what we call frictionally unemployed. For example, if you leave school and look for a job, you might not find a job straight away. When you leave university, it's not the best thing to jump into the first job. Wise people spend a little bit time looking. Also, I may move to a different land and be without work for a small period of time. And this is frictional unemployment, and it is quite normal. At this particular time, somebody will be looking for a job, somebody will be moving from a job, somebody may be moving from job to study, and vice versa. So, Woman in Black, this horror movie is finished, and we have some people singing on a tram in Italy. I feel a lot better, but still, I will go into the light and we will talk about something called price stability. Now, people like price stability. Why? Because it maintains economic stability. Yeah. If I am producing, I am able to mark up my prices. I am able to predict prices in the future. People won't be worried about asking for unnecessary pay rises because they will know that the prices are stable. when prices become unstable and inflation does rise, then there could be, and we looked at this in previous units, that the workers, especially unionized workers, will consider industrial action to get higher wages. So price stability. When I am selling to other countries, it's nice to have price stability because then foreign countries may buy our beautiful German wine and other beautiful European wines because they know they are stable in price, and then they don't have to worry if I've got a restaurant in, say, Singapore or a restaurant in the USA, then I can be buying the wines, the wonderful wines of Europe, and putting them on my menus and not having to change my menu every 3 or 4 months because the prices are stable. In fact, the government usually is aiming for about 2% increase in inflation. I say the government, I'm talking governments like Germany and other Eurozone countries which are aim for about 2%. We don't hardly notice 2%. Why not 0%? Well, it doesn't give the profit incentive to firms. If we put the prices and let the prices rise a little bit, then it gives the incentive to the firms to enter the industry, and normally a little bit of inflation, we'll learn later, is it correlates to economic growth, and with that we get more people in the industry and we should get an improvement in quality of product. I'll ask you to remember what we looked at in market structure there. Generally speaking, governments promote competition as a way of ensuring quality in products. So, economic growth. Economic growth is a sustained expansion of production possibilities over time. How can this happen? Well, there's an increase in quality and quantity of factors of production. Okay, you'll probably recognize this. This is a typical PPC, production possibility curve, sometimes referred to as a PPF, a production possibility frontier. Here it is typically mentioned capital goods versus consumer goods. A beautiful diagram. It illustrates the idea of scarcity, opportunity cost, and for us, economic growth. In this example, the PPC has shifted outwards. How could it do that? Well, governments could train their people so that they become more productive. The productivity rises, and with the same number of people and the same number of resources, they can produce more of consumer goods and more of capital goods. Alternatively, they could have an influx of skilled labor. People move to that country. They could discover new resources. They could discover gold. They could discover diamonds. They could use new technology. If they invest in technology and infrastructure, this can change the productive capabilities. So the PPC would shift outwards. Has it shifted outward yet? One thing of investing in infrastructure, it takes some time. If the government did spend on a school, then it may take a while for the people to go through the school and to gather the education and skills that make them productive workers. Equally, training through universities, if I build more of universities, there will be an initial cost, yeah, but I may not see this turn into economic growth until the people have passed through my universities and have been sufficiently trained and skilled. Well, economic growth, we'll see later, could be measured by aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Keynesians would like us to shift our aggregate demand outwards, but there is an argument that if we move our long-run aggregate supply outwards, then it gives us the potential of future economic growth. But that's for later, not for now. I find this particular formula very useful because aggregate demand, when it cuts aggregate supply, it actually gives me the total output or GDP of a country. Yeah. Now, AD equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. The C is for consumption. Consumption is the spending of the people in the economy. Investment is the money invested by firms in the economy, is capital investment. Government expenditure is government spending in the economy. Exports are called X because we're using the E for something else. The E is used for something else. The M is for imports because you can see we've already used the I. I hear little voices in the background. Little voice, come here, please. I want to demonstrate something. Okay? Stay there, little voice, out of camera. Stay there, little voice. Now, aggregate supply is the total output of all the producers in the economy. Now, aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Little voices, we are going to repeat together. AD is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Your turn, little voice.
C plus I plus G plus X minus M.
Your...
C plus I plus G plus X minus M.
All right, we need some more practice there. First little voice. AD is...
C plus A.
Whoops.
C
Let's do it together, little voices. C plus I plus G plus X minus M. C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Now let's see how good the little voices are at remembering this. Should I choose big little voice or little voice? Little voice, what is your favorite color? It's a trick question. Your favorite color?
Turquoise.
Turquoise. Turquoise. Little voice. AD is?
C plus I plus G plus X minus M.
Super! Let's try the bigger little voice. AD is?
C plus I plus G plus X minus M.
Now, what should we do? I know. Big little voice, what does the C stand for? I'm going to need some practice here. Little voice, what does the C stand for?
I don't know.
Okay, so let's do it together. Consumption. Consumption.
Consumption.
Other voice. Other voice. Other voice. Consumption. Investment.
Investment.
What does the C stand for?
Consumption.
Consumption.
Government spending is the G. What does the I stand for?
Investment.
Investment.
What does the X stand for? It stands for exports. What does the M stand for? It stands for imports. Now let's think of something. Why is there an ugly frog on my wall?
No idea.
No idea. What does the M stand for?
Imports.
Good. Why is there a hat on my wall?
Ask the other voice.
I must ask the other voice. The other voice does not talk. What does G stand for?
Government spending, I think.
You think correctly. I must then go to the next slide. Goodbye, little voices. Okay, this one doesn't really require much of face. Yeah, so a diagram is going to build itself. It will build itself slowly. Obviously, the PowerPoint is in no rush because it knows what it's doing, and it's going to take its time. Now, a diagram, if correctly labeled, could be worth up to 6 points. So is no point to rush the diagram. This particular diagram is showing some curvature in line, which is quite acceptable, but you could draw this diagram straight line too. Well, we have moved into microeconomics, so we're no longer looking at price and quantity, we are looking at average price level, because our aggregate demand curve will illustrate all the demand for all the products within my economy. It will be the demand for diamonds, the demand for cars, the demand for toast, the demand for sweets, the demand for shampoo, the demand for soap, the demand for strawberries, the demand for shoes, the demand for... And as you know, I could go on and on and on and on and on, because there are many things, goods and services, will be demanded in my economy. However, the aggregate demand curve will obey the law of demand, so would be downward sloping from left to right. However, we will know that a diamond or the top of a range car would be considered a luxury good, whereas if I am buying my shampoo from the Lidl, it might be considered an inferior good. I once bought some shaving blades from the Lidl, and it did shave more than the hair from my face. It did shave some skin from my face. So I don't buy them anymore. But if I suddenly became without money, maybe I'm on a trip and I realize I must shave and I have only limited disposable income on me, I might be tempted to buy the face-biting razor blades. So when in microeconomics, when we talk of certain goods, it might make a difference in their elasticity, the gradient of the slope. When we add everything together, an aggregate, we get a downward sloping curve. Now, on the other side, in my economy, at various of times throughout the year, people will be supplying goods and services. Now they will be obeying the law of supply. And the law of supply will give us a positively sloping curve from left to right. The y-axis, because the price of diamonds is different to the price of soap, is different to the price of a car, is different to the price of shoes, is different to the price of milk, we will have what is called an average price level. Some people may call it price level if you look on the internet, but I am happy with average price level. On the x-axis, we have real output. So where my AD cuts my AS, in this case a short run aggregate supply curve, we will have the real output. The real output will be the same as our real GDP. I'm saying real while we're waiting for this diagram to load. I will tell you that the real is inflation adjusted. So what they do is they adjust the nominal prices for the inflation so that they can get a better idea of growth of economy. For example, if my economy only produced one shoe, and that one shoe was priced at €1, and then my inflation rate became 100%, and the next year I only produced again one shoe, my nominal number would make it appear that I have produced more of shoe, but in fact what happened is the price of shoe went up. Yeah. I'm gonna go and get a little glass of water while this diagram continues to load. It should be pretty much loaded in next to no time, but let me get a little glass of water. It was water made with a soda stream. I'd made it earlier, that's why you didn't hear the sound of the soda stream. I'm going to stop now. Okay, for those who are really paying attention, you will remember that I didn't explain why exports weren't called E and why they were called X. Well, in an economy, we can have the expenditure method. And that is AD equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. The little voices have gone, but let's say together. X minus M. Ah, a little voice has returned. The expenditure method AD equals
C plus G plus X minus M.
You missed I. Yeah. Now,
yeah.
Thank you, little voice. Now this needs some practice. Yes. C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Now, you could say it in any way order you want. You could say C plus G plus I plus X minus M, but I always go C plus I plus G plus X minus M. I repeat it. Now the thing is, I have told the expenditure method, and expenditure is shown by a capital E. Now, if you are remembering and were looking well at that last diagram, you would see that they were measuring output as Y1. Y is the letter we use for income. And we know that I is the letter we use for investment. So these letters are given specified use in economics. So anyway, back to the current slide. Economic growth. Well, economic growth, I take the GDP of current year, I take away the GDP of the last year, and hopefully we have grown. If it is a bad time recession, there could be negative growth. Yeah? But economic growth, what we're wanting is steady economic growth. Later on, we'll find that if we grow too fast, is the possibility that we will hit a boom quickly and our recession will be deeper. This is the business cycle. But let's go back to why do we want sustained and steady economic growth? Well, it improves our standard of living. Our citizens have a better life. They can live longer, get good health care. If the economy is continuing to grow over a long period of time, then the government can invest in things like housing, etc., etc., etc. Lockdown situation is terrible. I can hear somebody snacking on cereal, I think. I'm feeling a little bit peckish myself. Let's look at redistribution of income. Well, I'm in a lucky position because while I'm feeling peckish, I do have food in my cupboards. But there are people that are poor. In fact, logic will say there are more people poor than are rich. And of these poor people, they are very poor. And they may need unemployment benefits. They may need somebody to pay for their education, to pay for meals at school. They may need help with housing. They might need a subsidy, or they may need to get certain things for free. Now, the idea of redistribution of income is taking the income in the form of taxation from the people who can afford to pay the tax and then spending it. Now, generally speaking, the rich will have to pay more tax than the poor. This is called progressive taxation, which we will meet later. It's an arguable concept, but in terms of fair society, generally speaking, there should be some element of redistribution of income.